Top of the morning, planet Earth. To all you ladies and gentlemen, a hearty and healthy Irish hello. You're listening to the Celtic Coach radio show where science, spirituality, and self-discovery meet. All right, welcome everyone. Boy, do we have a great show for you today. Topic of our show is the spiritual life. What's all the fuss? Now, is it true that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, or is it the other way around? How can we take our lives and make them better? What might be the hidden messages in illness and pain in our bodies? And we've heard the old adage of, well, you know, you create your own reality. Well, we're going to talk to a professional today. We are going to talk to a man who has actually taken the time to study a lot of this stuff, and we're going to have a conversation with him today. Our guest, please put your virtual hands together, is a man by the name of Daniel, also known as Daniel the Healer. He's an energy healer practitioner, body whisperer, psychic energy, and spiritual counselor who heals with love. Yes, the L-O-V-E, love. He's the ultimate authority on your energy field. Daniel, for decades, has studied, experienced, and mastered the art of quantum healing, which we're going to talk about with him today, and has shared it with his clients. He's also sought education and guidance from the world's greatest leaders in healing and spirituality. He's distilled this, developed tools of his own, and offers it to you in an amazing gift called Healing with Love. We're also going to be talking today about what the heck are your chakras? We all heard about our chakras. Do we have them? How do we know? And basically, take everything that you want to know about spirituality, and we're going to do our best today to have a conversation with Daniel and have him share. So without further ado, please put your hands together from a professional chef from Switzerland turned spiritual healer here in the States. Please put your hands together for a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful man by the name of Daniel the Healer. Daniel, can you hear us? All right, 1 second, Daniel.
Welcome to all of you out there listening to this.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Daniel. We're very excited to have you on the show today. We're happy that someone's come on the show, Daniel, that knows what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah, it helps, doesn't it?
It does. Well, it should be an interesting show. We got an Irishman from Dublin. And what part of Switzerland are you originally from, Daniel?
I'm from Basel. Basel is the town in the north of Switzerland bordering on France and Germany. And I do want to tell you that I also have an Irish passport because my wife's grandfather and grandmother were born in Ireland, and as such we were able to receive Irish citizenship. So I'm a kindred spirit to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, it's lovely to have you on the show. Now, Daniel, I got to ask you, how does a professional chef from Switzerland make his way over to America and become a healer? How did that happen? You didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to America, I'm going to be a healer, and forget all this cooking business.
Well, you see, Switzerland kind of has a tradition, a long-standing 14th, 15th, 16th century tradition that Swiss folks would go into the foreign countries to learn things and then come back to Switzerland and bring the knowledge to the Swiss so that they could ever become more proficient in producing their goods and creating things. And so after I learned my chef trade, I thought I would travel around the world. I would see the world. I went to Bermuda. I went to the Bahamas. And then in 1973, the Bahamian did not renew my work permit because that's when they got their independence and they wanted all the white folks out. And so I came to the United States and I liked it so much that eventually I just decided to stay here. There is definitely a greater freedom of lifestyle, and I appreciated that because in Switzerland, pardon my French, but most people are pretty anal retentive.
Yeah, well, and the weather's better here too, right? That's why I left Ireland.
Yeah, it's definitely warmer. I'm in Los Angeles, which is part of the warmer part of the United States. I used to live in South Florida, which was really warm, and I like the climate. Now about how to transition from chefing to healing. Well, at one point I became vegetarian, and since I was cooking to taste, I couldn't cook my meat dishes anymore, and I had to look for other things. So I got involved in traveling the country and teaching vegetarian cooking classes, but that really didn't quite work well, so I got into other things. I actually started my healing career more on the side. Originally, whilst after I gave up my chefing business, I became a computer programmer, and I worked on that about 20 years. But on the side, I would see clients. I started with hypnosis and continuously added more and more to it. Yeah. And about 10 years ago, I made it a full-time profession.
Now, Daniel, do you think, based on your experience, do you think that life calls us to choose a profession, or do we choose it? How does that work based on your own experience?
Well, yes, basically, we're the boss. We are in charge of our destiny. We are in charge of what we want to do in this life. But there's a second aspect to that, and the second aspect is that you in this physical life, as this energy form attached to this physical body in this three-dimensional world here on planet Earth. You who you are here on Earth are part of, but distinctly separate of you who you are, the eternal self. And the reason there is distinction, because you who you are, the eternal self, you are in timeless, and you who you are here on planet Earth are in time and therefore have duality. And so because we in time do not really connect well with the timeless, we forget who we are. So even though you are part here on Earth of you, the eternal self, there's a forgetfulness, there is a separation, and you do not really understand, unless you know how to connect with that, you don't really understand who you are as the eternal self. And so you who you are here, you may have one desire, and you who you are, the eternal self, you may have a different one. And the idea, once you really things start to gel and you're in bliss all the time and all that, is when you can connect with who you are, the eternal self, and the both of you are on the same wavelength, wanting to do the same thing. And my eternal self wanted to be a healer. And so ever since I started to be a healer full-time, I'm just connecting with me, the divine, and I'm in total bliss.
Because I know now, I hear that kind of, Daniel, as like the little voice on my shoulder that is just constantly kind of whispering through, trying to get through all the noise of my thinking and my day-to-day, to-do lists. It seems like it's a little voice that's kind of whispering, hey, try this out or try that out, because we all have that, right? We all have those little dreams, those little desires, those little nagging wishes that don't go away, that are kind of pointing us in one direction, but we seem to be, as a society, we seem to be caught up in more of wanting life to be certain, as opposed to listening to that little voice that's saying, hey, try this out, try that out. What would you say to people who have an inkling of, hey, I'd really like to do this, but I've got all these responsibilities and I've got this and I've got that. I can't just go away and be a spiritual this, blah, 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 blah. What do you say to people like that?
First, what I want to say here is that you have to be certain that the little voice, because the little voice can be a lot of things. The little voice can be your inner child that is immature, or your inner adolescent that doesn't know that much yet. But if you're certain, and that inner voice then can be your guardian angels or your higher self or your soul, then I would say you need to go for that. Now, because of practical aspects, such as that we live in a reality where the money. We exchange money for goods and goods for money and work for money, and all that money is all in there, and we need money to survive. You have to first do what it takes for you to survive. But for you to be a happy person, you got to set aside some time, some me time. And in that me time, you need to follow your dreams. You need to see where that takes you and what it does for you. And so I recommend to people, you need to have something that you are passionate about, that gets your juices flowing, that in the morning when you get up, instead of saying, oh, just another day, you say, wow, another day, and here we go, and this is what we're going to do, and la-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so if you have this drudgery 9 to 5 for you to be able to make it, then you need to set some time aside, maybe half an hour a day or half a day on the weekends, where you really get into that, because that will create a complete new template for you. And your drudge job, your 9 to 5, is not a drudge job anymore, because it is through that you can have your passion. And so you're basically then, everything becomes a passion. And that is how you invigorate your life and how you put that extra spark into your day-to-day activities.
Yeah, well, I mean, I reckon it, because what I hear in that, Daniel, is that, and it's been true for me too, that there's only, it's not a thinking thing. You can't think your way into, okay, well, let me go this route. It's more of a, hey, let me flirt with this. Let me try this and see what comes out of it.
Yes, but and when you introduced me, you said I was a holistic healer. That means that I work with you on all your levels of existence, meaning the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And so, yes, you need to function on all 4 levels. So, no, don't give up your thinking, but add to it your feeling, add to it your temperament. What is it that your body would really like to do? If you have the temperament of a person who continuously wants to be outside, then please don't have a desk job. Your body will not like this. And finally, what does your spirit, soul, higher self, all the spiritual aspects of you say? And if you can take those 4 sides of yourself and be in agreement, then everything will function way, way, way better.
What would you say, Daniel, is, because one of the things in there that I was talking to the listeners during the week about having you on is a spiritual life. Like, how would you, if someone didn't know what the heck you were talking about in terms of spiritual life, I never heard of it, what channel is that on? How would you describe a person who is living a spiritual life?
Okay, so basically we need to distinguish what spirituality means. And spirituality means that you have an inner dialogue, not external, inner dialogue with the divine, whatever that divine is for you. And so that if this is important to you, that you dialogue with what you consider to be the divine internally, not through going to church and listening to a minister or a rabbi or a priest who tells you that God says this and God says that. That is religion. Distinct that you go into a quiet internal space and that you listen to what comes to you with the intent of communicating with the divine. That is called spirituality. And when you are able to do this, then whole new vistas and horizons open up for you. Because then, once you've established this connection, then all of a sudden you can speak to this one and that one and the other one, all on the other side. And you can get information, you can get input. Even a famous physicist, Albert Einstein, said that his best ideas came when he was drifting, daydreaming, meditating, or night dreaming. That's when his ideas came to him. And so he received the information that he brought in from the other side, but he received it internally. It came in as a gestalt. You know, some people in neurolinguistics programming, there are the audials, there are the visuals, and the kinesthetics. These are three different ways that you receive information. The audials hear it, the visuals see it, the kinesthetic just get it, they feel it. And so when you know how to dialogue with your insides, then that's when you are on a spiritual path.
Yeah, I like that. I remember Einstein. He called that connectivity that we all have, you know, to all things, that we're all connected on a light level, on photons being light particles, and he called it spooky action in a distance. He couldn't understand why it was or how it was that we were all so connected. Talk a little bit about, I find this fascinating in terms of Einstein. I find it fascinating, Daniel, that you're able to sit at your desk, you know, having a cup of tea in the morning, and you can psychically heal somebody, you know, halfway around the world. Talk a little bit about that, and maybe share a story to validate that. Hey, is that spooky, or does it actually work? You know.
Okay. So one of the modalities, I have several modalities. A modality is something that healers use as a term. My modality is Reiki. My modality is this. My modality is that. Okay, so I've worked with several modalities. One of my modalities is psychic surgery, where I enter somebody else's psyche and change things around in their psyche for the benefit of them. So, first of all, and we haven't covered I have to kind of sidetrack a little bit into the whole chakra business.
Yeah, sure. However you want to go with our conversation.
Okay, and I'll come back to this.
Yeah.
So your chakras are kind of your vortices, your energy vortices between you and your world. They are your microphones and your loudspeakers and your measuring devices. You know, a measuring device is like a voltmeter. You want to check that the juice that comes out of the outlet is still good. You plug in those two prongs. You look at your meter and it says 115 volt. Yes, everything's good. So your chakras measure energies, but they also send out energy and receive energy. Now, when a chakra doesn't function well, then you either don't get what is happening, or you don't receive the signals you should be receiving, or the signals that you wish to send out are not making it out. So, when I look at somebody's energy field, I can perceive whether their chakras are working properly or not. And if they are not working properly, then using psychic surgery, and I will explain that a little further as well, I go and tweak their chakra so that it functions back normally, which means now all of a sudden the person, you know, let's say your solar plexus. Your solar plexus projects your will. If your solar plexus is broken, you have a will, but your world doesn't understand your will and does not hop to according to your will. So at work, for instance, you could give out orders, and yeah, the words are here, but the energy behind the words is not here, and whatever you order to go out is not perceived and does not get fulfilled properly. And so when I go there and I fix your solar plexus, then all of a sudden your will gets projected into the world, and other people, because they not only respond to what they hear, but they also respond to the energies, will understand what it is that you wish to have done and will do that. So that is one of the aspects of intervening in somebody's energy field, specifically here, as I mentioned, on somebody's solar plexus chakra.
Mm-hmm. And so they'll call you up and tell you, hey, I've got this pain or something going on, and you'll... Now, is it a perception, or do you actually see people's... You know the way we have an aura around us? Do you see people's from a distance? Can you see their auras?
Yes, it's kind of... I do have to close my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
There are some visuals.
Yeah.
And I used 3 input methods. One is my experience, because I've had many people who've told me the same story. So there, number 1 is my experience. Number 2 is my intuition, that which I perceive with my other senses. And third is I have a team of spirit helpers that are with me, that help me when I do my healing work, and sometimes they will whisper to me and say, hey, watch out for this, that is not working right.
Mm-hmm.
So between the experience, the intuition, and receiving information from other dimensions, that creates quite a complete... I'm also a medical intuitive, that creates quite a complete picture of a diagnosis of what's not working right now. Sometimes, of course, it's physical, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's emotional, and sometimes it's energetic, spiritual. So depending on what comes up, then you have to, if it's just somebody is sluggish because, they don't have enough vitamin C, then I'll figure that out, and I say, hey, you just need to take more vitamin C.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like you said, you wanted me to give you some example.
Yeah.
Well, I had this person that came to me, and they had a curvature in the spine, and that's one of the other things that I do with my gaze. I'm a gazer. With my gaze, I looked at her spine. I figured out where it was crooked, and I ran heart or love energy into those vertebrae that weren't functioning properly, and the spine straightened out. Well, fantastic. So she went home, and I always have a follow-up visit. So a few days later, she came back, and the spine was right back to where it was before I treated her. That means that it wasn't just a simple, your spine is crooked. There must be some reasons. And so I went looking. On the emotional, and that was all clear. The mental was all clear, but the energetic, she was under psychic attack.
From somebody else.
So the psychic attack that I perceived in that particular case was she had a dagger in her back. And so using surgical tools, just as if you had a knife in your back and you went to the hospital, what are they going to do? Well, if you lost blood, they're going to give you a blood transfusion, and they're going to clean the wound, and they're going to remove the knife, and they're going to clean once the knife is removed, they're going to clean the wound again, they're going to disinfect it, and then they're going to suture it, and then they're going to give you bandages. Well, I do all that in my imagination. That's why it's called psychic surgery. Mm-hmm. And so I did that for this woman, and I removed her knife and, again, lined up her spine, and she was all straight leaving, and then again, when she came back a few days later, it held. So the reason for her crooked spine was actually a psychic attack.
Yeah. Now, the energy that you're sending... Now, by the way, listeners, just so you know that what we're talking about has a real scientific... a lot of evaluation, a lot of work has been done, a lot of tests have been done. They've proved through a lot of different test that there is a field, a container that you can call it photons of light, you can call it the ether, you can call it whatever you want, exists within and around and as all things. And we are always interacting with that field on a conscious, a subconscious, an unconscious, a superconscious level. And so what Daniel's talking about, as far out there as it might sound, on this quantum level, it's very possible. Am I close with that, Daniel, in terms of how you work?
Yes, I perceive that field. I perceive my connection, and I know I've learned how to affect somebody else's personal field by projecting the desired outcome from my field into their field. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can two questions first, Daniel. I want to ask, how do we clean our chakras? And then also, can we learn to heal ourselves, or do we need to go to somebody to, like I, for myself, know that I'm working with a healer right now because I've had neck and shoulder stuff my whole life, stiff neck and that type of thing, and I'm working with someone on that. Can we, how do we clean our chakras, and then is it possible for us to heal ourselves, and how might we do that?
Well, I don't think you can clear your chakras and clean them up and make certain you spin them in a particular way, and I think that would be about 10 minutes for me to explain to everybody out here how to do that. So yes, if you want to devote 10 minutes of the show to me explaining that, I'll gladly do it. But if it's outside of that, I'm just going to say here that yes, you can clean your chakras, and it is really good for you to do that, because your chakras are probably the most important part of your energy field, and if one of your chakras doesn't function well, then if you pray to God, and you ask, "Dear Lord, please, I wish to receive this, that, and that," that has to be translated, because God doesn't listen to you in English. God listens to you in energies. So that desire, because when you have a desire, you see it in images or outcomes, and that outcome translates into emotions and images and sounds, into energies, and then that gets projected out through your chakras, your prayer. And that's how God understands what it is that you're asking for. But if your chakra is broken or misaligned, then instead of you saying, "Oh, I really wish to be well," it may come out on the other side, "Oh, I really wish to be sick." And so it is important to keep your chakras clean.
Yeah.
And you do that by spinning them, by working with them in your imagination.
Yeah, well, and I know that doing my research for the show, on one of the videos you were talking to Marla Marlinson about, when you take a shower, you can clean your chakras that way. Could you give us a brief description of how to do that?
Well, that is not really the chakras. That's just your energy field.
Oh, your energy field, yes.
You kind of have an aura. And the aura is your personal energy space. It's an elliptical shape, egg-shaped container that's about 2 to 3 feet above your head, 2 to 3 feet below your feet, and 2 to 3 feet out to the side of you. And so just for the purpose of me explaining this to you, when you go to work and you work in a high-rise and you all jam into the elevator in the morning rush, and you're all like shoulder to shoulder, then all your energy fields overlap. And so you may pick up a lot of stuff that is not really yours.
Yeah, so that's why the elevator is so weird when you walk in.
Yeah, you don't have your personal space.
Yeah. No, I feel it as soon as I go into the elevator. I'm like, "Ooh, okay, where do I look?"
Yeah, I mean, when people go into a movie theater, how do they sit down? They don't sit down one next to the other. Right. They always try first to have some chairs between you and the next person.
Yes.
And then when it really gets filled up, then, okay, so we have to use every chair. But, so when your energy fields overlap, you pick up a lot of stuff. And so one of the things that I'm talking here about that is really, really very simple to do is for you to keep your energy field clean. And I do that in the shower. When I take my shower and the water now comes down from the shower head and not only cleans my physical body, soap and then rinsing off, but I take a moment and I just stand there with the intention that the water coming through, because it also comes through my energy field, that the water cleans up my energy field. And if you take a moment to think about that, it doesn't happen on its own without you using your imagination and your desire by imagining it that way. That's the desire for you, that you now are tasking the water with cleaning up your energy field. And then what you do is you just stand there for 10, 15 seconds with the intent that the water cleans out your energy field, sensing that all this gray matter gets washed down the drain, and that cleans your energy field. Now, that's a really simple thing to do, and that alone can already feel very beneficial to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Daniel, I'm going to do a quick radio break here, and we'll be right back, so please stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. For all the listeners out there, you're listening to the Celtic Coach Radio Show, where science, spirituality, and self-discovery meet. We're talking to Daniel the Healer here. We'll be right back after this announcement. Stay tuned, everyone. Top of the morning, Sonoma County. If you've just listened in, you're listening to the Celtic Coach Radio Show, where science, spirituality, and self-discovery meet. You're listening to KOWS.FM, F for Frank, M4. That's really special effects we'll come up with on the show. Matilda, we are the voice of West Sonoma County. You can pick us up on the radio at 92.5 FM and on the World Wide Web at KOWS.FM. Today we're talking with a very special guest, Daniel the Healer, energy healer practitioner, body whisperer, and psychic energy and spiritual counselor who heals with love of all things. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time today. Daniel, I want to talk a little bit about, I was reading some studies this morning. 3 million men with prostate cancer every year. 4 million people every year suffer from constipation. And now people at home might be, he's not going to talk about constipation, but it's a real dis-ease in the body for a lot of people. So I want to talk about those two things, starting with prostate cancer. Why is it that women seem to have thyroid problems and men are having prostate cancer? What's the deal? What's going on there?
Well, one of the things that's going on is that our energies as a society are pretty warped. Mm-hmm. You see, there's a balance between masculine and feminine energies. And the masculine energies that have to do with will and action in our society are way, way more revered than the feminine energies that have to do with intuition and feeling. And so our whole, how we function as a society is way, way out of sync. And so in the masculine dynamic is distorted. And so in the masculine dynamic, what is happening is, first of all, we are coming to a point where this is changing. But until now, and for the last 6,000 years, we've been in a very strong patriarchy, meaning that what man says is more important than what woman says. And so that has kind of gone haywire. And the whole thing now is that man's standing in society comes from his success, his achievement, his actions. And unfortunately, and everything is hierarchical. So in every pyramid, there's only one spot on the top. In the military, there's only one 5-star general.
Right.
In the corporation, there's only one CEO. And it is up to the other men to hopefully move up the ladder. And so when they don't move up the ladder, then they are perceived as being less successful or as outright failures. And for a man, if he's experienced too much failure as a man, he's going to develop prostate cancer because now it's true that more women than not have thyroid problems, but there's also men having thyroid problems, and the thyroid has to do, when is it ever going to be my time, my turn? When am I finally get to do what I want to do? And of course, women have been trained to be subservient to the man, and of course they get it more often. But as far as the prostate, the breasts, the uterus, the fallopian tubes, these are organs that are gender specific. And whenever there is an organ that is affected that is gender specific, it has to do that something as far as the expression of this person in their gender is not working right. And so all the men who feel that they are a failure as a man will push that into their prostate and eventually turns into cancer.
Yeah. Now, do you believe, Daniel, that then all cancer is created in that way, regardless of where it shows up in the body?
Most cancer is created by us not being able to release our pent-up angers. Mm-hmm. We are, again, in a society that believes in not expressing yourself in that way to other people, and so we eat it.
Yeah.
And if you eat it long enough, it's going to eat you up from the inside.
Yeah.
And what does cancer do? Cancer eats you up from the inside.
Yeah,
so, for the most part, yes, there's other reasons. It can also be environmental, in the sense if you get exposed to too many petroleum products or toxins. I understand that asbestos created lung cancers. It's called mesothelioma. And so there are some external reasons as well. But if the reason is internal, then it has to do with anger that has old festering angers that have not been released.
Yeah. What's the easiest way to release anger? How would you know if you had anger issues in your body, Daniel?
Well, what you would... You kind of need to be sensitive enough and take inventory. But if there's something that, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you have a major outburst that is disproportionate to the event, then that means that there is unprocessed anger that is still within you.
Unless you live in L.A.,
even in LA now that I've released all my old angers, I don't get upset when somebody cuts me off.
You really are enlightened, Daniel. Oh, wow. Well, here's something interesting that I heard you talk about.
Well, wait a second, because you asked me how to deal with the anger and how to release it, and I do want to finish that.
Please.
And so what you need to do is you need to go into your imagination, and you need to have an internal hissy fit. In other words, those that you're angry at, you need to conjure them up in your imagination, and you need to let them have it. You need to punch them, you need to kick them, you need to scream and holler at them, you need to use swear words. You really need to have in your imagination, I repeat that, in your imagination. Don't do it live. Don't do it out there with your body.
Right, don't hit send.
Yes, you need to have a real temper tantrum internally until you get it off your chest. And how do you know whether you got it off your chest or not? Well, if you think of this situation, if it has absolutely no charge anymore, oh yes, my father used to beat me up. Okay, my father used to beat me up. Does that have any charge? No. But if you're still angry, it's, oh, my father used, oh, that sucker, he beat me, and they get all excited. That is charge. If you think of some event that at one point in your life got you angry and you're still starting to steam, then you're still holding that event in you. And so you need to have this internal hissy fit, temper tantrum, anger release until it's all good. You can think of it, and it's just a plain, simple memory. Well, when that happens, when you're clear emotionally of this event, then you can forgive the person. I forgive you, and now you're karmically totally separated. That, by the way, is something that really has contributed to my bliss, is that I reconnected in my mind with everybody who has ever wronged me or that I have wronged them. And I made peace with them, and I've had forgiveness, and I expressed my sorrow if I did what was wrong. I had sorrow, and I also let myself off the hook by forgiving myself for those circumstances. And so my past is not haunting me anymore. I'm free of my past. I can live in the now.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with that. Now, because, and I didn't do it in my mind. I did it physically, Daniel, where I, back in the day, my 30s, very angry guy. And I spent about 10 years in a 12-step program doing, going through the 12 steps and releasing all of that and making amends. And it was the same thing. Does it matter whether you do it in your mind or whether you do it physically? Like, you're not hurting the person by having by the way, listeners, a hissy fit, that's a scientific description for beating the crap out of someone in your mind. Does it matter whether you do it in your head or physically?
Well, initially, you may want to beat up a pillow.
Yeah.
You may want to think this pillow is so-and-so and you're... But you can hurt yourself when you do that. I remember doing one of my anger releases, and instead of hitting the pillow, I was so discombobulated and so upset that I hit the bedpost. And that really hurt. And so I thought, okay, so maybe once or twice or three times until your body understands that you are releasing anger, then you can definitely do it in your imagination. And you need to understand here, we live in the three-dimensional world, the depth, the width, the height. That three-dimensional world is encased in the fourth dimension of time-space. But the fifth dimension, beyond that, is will and imagination. So imagination is more real than you doing it in 3D. And if you understand this, then all you have to do is do it in your imagination, and it'll sink down into your physical world, and it will release it.
Now, one of the things, thank you, Daniel, one of the things that I found fascinating listening to one of your interviews was we talked about unexpressed anger showing up in the body as physical illness, but you also talk about unexpressed love. You talk a little bit about that and how does that show up in the body?
Well, that can show up as a heart attack.
Right,
because we want to love. We want to receive love and we want to give love. And for most of us, the closest experience we ever had is when we were like just growing up and entering adolescence and puberty, and our hormones were pumping, and there was this person you had a secret crush on. And didn't that hurt? Didn't it hurt for you to have this crush on this person, yet you didn't have the presence or the self-confidence to go to them and talk to them that you loved them? It is so hurtful. So when you are in a situation where you are with a mate and your mate is very unemotional and you really love him or her dearly and they cannot accept your love, if that happens too long, the pain in your heart can translate into a heart attack.
That makes total sense to me. I mean, in my relationship now, I'm learning because, I came from quite a lot of dysfunction and was shut down for quite a while, but learning how to express love. Would it be fair to say, Daniel, that, what we hold from ourselves, we'll hold for another, and vice versa, what we hold from another, we'll hold from ourselves?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And isn't that beautiful? Because yes, when it happens in the negative, then it's really unfortunate. But when it happens in the positive, it's the most heartwarming and beautiful experience.
Well, it's something to consider in terms of, I'm a professional life coach, and clients come to me sometimes, and they say, we were so in love, and where's the love gone? And I often think to myself, the love hasn't gone anywhere. You've just stopped expressing it. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well,
where does love go? It doesn't go anywhere.
That is because, but there may have been arguments. There may have been circumstances, in a particular modality. I'm okay, you're okay. They talk about transactional analysis, and they talk about your inner child, your inner adolescent, your inner adult, and your inner parent. Well, in a relationship, once you get, first of all, you fall in love and everything, and you have this big dream, and then you get married and you move in together, and then all of a sudden, many men think at this point now it is their time to become the authority, to become the boss of the relationship. So all of a sudden, instead of you talking to your partner as the man, you talk to your partner as the authority, as the parent. And when you talk to somebody as a parent, then they revert into their child. And when they revert into their child, and you're the parent, then you're not equals anymore. Mm-hmm. And then you cannot have an equal love relationship between a parent and a child. That's what happens when you're raised by your parents. They love you. There's parental love. And so if you, instead of having relationship love, all of a sudden insert parental love into your relationship, the relationship breaks apart, and there's all these pains and all these hurts and all these disappointments, and then they overshadow. The first few times something, it's okay, I understand and stuff, but if it's done over and over again, then at one point you're going to lose your spark. And once you lose your spark, then you're just still together out of convenience. Mm-hmm. And that's unfortunate because the spark of love that was there originally is not there any longer in the present.
Mm-hmm. Now, Daniel, I want to shift gears a little bit because I heard you talking about something that really fascinated me. I never heard of it before until you talked about it in one of your interviews. Every house has a house spirit. Now, how the heck would you know if you had a house spirit, and how would you talk to it if you had one?
Okay, so the most ancient modality that existed before religion, before everything originally came out of that, is shamanism. And within shamanism, there is the term or the knowledge that a house has a house spirit. And so when we learned about that, we were a part of the course we took was with a shaman, and he explained to us how to work and how to find and call your house spirit. So first I'm going to tell you what it really does. So our house spirit that we have given the gifts to, our house spirit, once we moved into this house now that we are renting, we had a little ceremony and we gave the house spirit 2 crystals. And so the house spirit, it's not really that intelligent an energy, but the house spirit, if you're on the good side, wants you to have the best circumstance and the best experience living in the house. So for us, the house spirit kind of protects the house from unwanted entry when we're away from the house, and the house spirit also keeps the house in good working condition, and looks after the appliances, the air conditioner, the furnace, and all these things. And so we have very few defects, even though we live in a house that's over 50 years old.
Now, Daniel, will the house spirit do the vacuuming?
No, does not.
Okay.
But
right.
The house spirit will help us in keeping unwanted critters out of the house, which is really nice. In 4 years, we've only had 1 ant invasion.
Yeah.
And so, and we figured it out and cleaned it all up. So what you do is you do need to have perceptions. You do need to have kind of a fine-tuned perception, but you go to one of the inner walls of the house, and you get really close to the wall, and you tap the wall. Like, I don't know if you guys can hear this.
Yeah.
Like so, you tap on the wall with the purpose of calling the house spirit. And then right below where you tapped, you cup your 2 hands together, and you move the 2 hands towards the wall. And if you have the sensitivity, you can actually sense the house spirit jumping into your cupped hands. And then you can dialogue with the house spirit.
Wow. Holy moly.
Holy moly indeed.
That's, I've never heard of a house spirit, but, I've watched all the movies, the poltergeists and all that. Could you have like an angry house spirit?
Well, you could have an angry spirit living in your house, but it's not the house spirit.
All right, that'd be something for a whole nother show, Daniel. All right, Daniel, with we still have 5 minutes here, and I want to just connect some of the listeners to some of your services and your website. Tell me, what is this life essence reading? What that sounds? It sounds very cool.
All right. So first of all, the healer is not my last name. I'm sure everybody figured that out by now.
I thought it was the.
You see? So I do have a last name, but my public persona is Daniel the Healer, and I branded myself that way.
Yes.
So my website is danielthehealer.com. My YouTube channel is YouTube/Daniel the Healer. My Facebook channel is Facebook- / Daniel the Healer. I'm Daniel the Healer everywhere out there on social media. I only do Facebook and YouTube. I don't do Twitter and stuff like that. So that's how you can figure out who I am and get more information. And that's also on my website. There's a contact page, and you can send me messages if you have questions and things like that. Now, the life essence reading is something interesting in the sense that it is a kind of an overview of your spiritual development. What I do is I look at about 85 different aspects in your energy field, and out of that emerges an image where you stand spiritually and where you stand with your energies. And so my life essence reading is something I like to do. So sometimes people come to me and they say, oh, this is not working right, but I have no idea why. And there are people who really, frankly and honestly, do not know why they are suffering. All they know, they're suffering. Oh, I don't have enough energy. I don't have enough energy. I tried everything. I don't have enough energy. Well, when I look at them energetically, maybe their aura has a leak. And I fix that leak, and then they have more energy. So I like to do the life essence reading, which is an assessment of about 85 different criteria in somebody's energy field.
Fascinating. DanielTheHealer.com. All right, Daniel, before we love and leave, we have 3 little questions that we like to ask all our guests before they head off. First question, Daniel. When you look out into the world, what do you see?
When I look out in the world, I see the most glorious stage for us to interact with each other, with so much intricacy and beauty, with so much goodness in the human spirit and in the human soul, and the goodness of who we are. And, you know, ETs come and look at us. Why? Because they're fascinated. Because there's several hundred races in our universe, but this human race is able to express their love the strongest of any other race, and they want to learn from us, and that's why many ETs are hanging around and watching what we're doing. So I see that in our world.
Everything that we talked about today, Daniel, if you could summarize it and just share, what do you want people to walk away with from our show today? What would be possibly the number one thing to walk away with from our show?
The absolutely one number thing is that we're at the threshold of the most glorious future imaginable. It's on its way. Things are not going to be what they've used to be for the last 6, 8, 10,000 years. We're moving into a time where we will have a personal and subjective reality. Everyone has their own subjective reality. And so keep your spirits high and keep your resonance high. Don't let yourself be dragged down by this little petty thing or that little petty thing. Keep your resonance high and see yourself that you're going to enter this glorious future.
Last question, Daniel. When you leave this world and you head off to the next dimension or consciousness, heaven, whatever you want to call it, what do you want God to say to you?
Hi, welcome back home.
Beautiful. All right. Again, everyone, Daniel's website is danielthehealer.com, and you can reach out and talk to Daniel or take this conversation a little bit further, or if you want to get some of his services, please feel free to do that. Daniel, an absolute pleasure. I'd love to, in the future, have you come back on the show. I think we only scratched the surface of a spiritual conversation. We could have gone a lot of different ways today, but really appreciate your time and your attention today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I'm definitely willing to come back at some later time when giving others room to speak as well. It was a total pleasure. What beautiful questions you had. Thank you for having me on your shows, and I wish you and everybody listening to this all the best.
All the best. Thanks, Daniel. All the best to you now. Lots of love. Cheers.